think the danger of Christian schooling for parents is that it can be like, oh great, the school does that discipleship thing, I don't need to think about it.
Offloading.
Yeah, the offload. Yeah. So I send my kids to a Christian school and I send them to kids' church when I can, and therefore I don't need to do anything at the home. And that doesn't work either, because
welcome back everyone to the Shockers Over podcast. It is fantastic to have you along with us, and it's fantastic to have our usual co-hosts along with me, but hello Tim, hello Stu, I should say. However, we have an extra person on the podcast today by the name of David. Welcome, David. It's Stonestreet, I should say your last name as well. Welcome to the Shockers Over. Avid Shockers Over listener, I think.
I do listen to it. So thanks for having me at the thing.
Well, it's great.
Yeah.
We should say up front you're the principal of Shire Christian School, but it's school holidays, so you're able to join us on the podcast on a Friday morning, which is brilliant. So thank you for being here.
Great to be here.
It's great to have you on, and we had you on the Chip Lunch podcast just before.
It's good fun.
And we labelled you with the term Soul Revival adjacent, like we have with a couple of other people that have come on. And you have been part of Soul Revival. So a good way to start would be perhaps to share some stories, cultural artifacts, as we sometimes term it, or you didn't term it that way as well, about how did you guys meet? And in particular, we should say Stu and Dave to start off with. But then, Tim, I'm sure you've got some memories as well of David's time at, is it Gymea Anglican Church?
I do.
But why don't we let our guest go first?
Before I get to social cultural artifacts, I have two physical cultural artifacts. Can I show them?
Sure. What have we got?
All right. So first of all, I have the original Soul Revival Berea T-shirt.
Oh, very nice.
It's faded, but Soul Revival Berea, which Stuart would have given me back in the day.
Yep, it's worn, pretty worn out there.
Yep.
And the other?
This is my best one.
Oh.
Soul Revival member card.
Oh, is that the first one? That's pretty cool.
I am member number 9.
Oh.
So it came out in 94.
Yeah.
94-009.
Yeah.
And I seem to remember Stu giving this to me. And I remember Alyssa and I coming to your door at the house at Grays Point. Not you answered, and we got members.
Got the members out, let us in.
So, yep, I have my original Soul Revival member
009.
Cool.
009.
That's pretty good.
And that looks like Kylie Hook's handwriting as well, that she's put on the back of there to write your name on it. She was our first admin person.
Who was at my daughter's wedding on Saturday.
She was. She was also founding leader of Soul Revival.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
With us
So they're my physical cultural artifacts.
Very nice.
So that shirt can go now. I've been saving it for just for this day.
That's cool. I don't think I have a member card. Do you have a member card there, Tim?
No, I have a commitments card.
Oh.
Replace the member cards at some point.
Okay.
Or when they stopped counting.
Yeah.
When people were involved.
When they got past member 7,000. You've got other artifacts.
Well, Stu and I were at the same church when Soul Revival started, and Andrew Patch was the youth minister, and you were a youth leader.
Yes, that's correct.
And because I was living in the same house as Andrew Patch and another guy, and we had an empty garage, I believe the first Soulies meeting that wasn't at the church was in our garage.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Was the first Soulies meeting?
Yeah, it was the first Soulies meeting.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
That's
so, I remember cleaning it out. And
you had a couple of cockroaches in there?
We put a couple of roach bombs in there, set them off, shut the doors and ran.
Yeah, we did.
And the exodus across the Red Sea was amazing. Like they were coming out any gap or hole, they were running.
Oh.
So after that, however, it was a really good venue.
Oh, very good. Is this when you mixed all the paint together?
We did.
To make it the brown?
Yeah,
we went down to Ken Elliott's dad's garage and just got some tins of used paint that he hadn't used, and we mixed them all together and made a brown colour, and then we whacked that on the walls.
I have found that all colours do lead to brown.
Yeah, right.
And I found that in my cooking. So I remember trying to blend broccoli so my daughter wouldn't know it was in there, and that's green, and you put it in a tomato paste, so you've basically got yellow, blue and red. That's brown. So I think all roads lead to brown.
And then she thinks it's pureed meat, and she eats it.
How old were you guys at the time?
I came there in 1990, so I was 21. Stu's just slightly older than me. And
just younger, actually, 20 I think I was.
Probably noticing each other within a year or so. And there was an event where I came to you to look at your Mac or something like that.
Yes.
I was trying to think in the other podcast whether Daniel Stoddart had recommended that I help you with something. And we just clicked, really.
We did.
Like we knew each other at the church at that point. But after that, we started, seeing each other a lot more and visiting and hanging out at each other's houses.
You gave me my first Francis Schaeffer book. The Great Evangelical Disaster was the first one you gave me.
Yeah, we were talking about that on Chip Lunch.
Yeah, we're talking about Francis Schaeffer,
That changed my life.
Well, mine too, yeah.
Why was it so impactful, Francis Schaeffer, reading his work?
We just frothed over it, didn't we? What was it?
Now, so I read a lot of his books, and I'm like, this guy he's saying the same thing in every book. It's not no original. Every time I read it, it's got personal infinite Jesus, personal infinite God, infinite personal God, personal infinite God. And I'm like, he's got no new ideas after he wrote his first 3 books. And then I found myself in a conversation with someone, and of all the authors I could quote, it was Francis Schaeffer, and I went, you clever guy.
He knows what he's doing.
You've got 3 main points you want us to know, and you've put it in every book. And so the idea that God can be infinite, this is almost actually the transcendence and the immanence. So that God can be infinite, but also personal, and you don't have just to have one or the other. And that was one of the things. And so I think because he founded L'Abri, so that is a community for thinking Christians. And people going there were saying, when I say to them at church, why is this true? Well, you just need to believe. Well, why should I need to believe? Well, you just need to. They weren't getting the answers. And Schaeffer in the 60s was engaging with existentialism and thing. I think it was postmodernism around by then.
Yep.
So
Culture.
he was actually not saying these are things you shouldn't think about. He was saying, let's talk about that and let's look at where Christianity sits and why it has answers. So I really appreciated Schaeffer's thoughts on these things, and as what I would call myself a thinking Christian, he wasn't just whitewashing over. You didn't have to commit intellectual suicide to be a Christian.
Yeah. And look, because L'Abri is really impactful on your ministry as well, right?
Yeah, very much, yeah.
Why was that?
Oh, because of the books. Also the format of learning too. Louise and I managed to get over to L'Abri in 2000.
You work in the morning, don't you?
They all go. It's quite a maybe
you work
for
on the side in the morning and then study in the afternoon.
Yeah,
so
maybe another day we could go into it in more detail. But that's basically it. Yeah, everyone has this shared life. It's like a transient commune. Like they don't stay there forever, but people come and visit, and while they're there, they all contribute to the. They're in the veggie garden,
the running
sort
of
picking food and then in the kitchen and cleaning but then in the afternoon they sit around and someone plays piano and plays Bach, and then someone gives a lecture on postmodernism and people get to sit around and talk about it, all in this incredible view of the Alps in Switzerland. It's amazing.
And they love the breadth of life. So Schaeffer used to say Christianity's not just about getting saved, it's about what happens the next day. What are you saved to? You're saved at 18 or something like I was. That's 40 years ago. What are the next 40 years? It's not just a gospel tract. And so there might have been a song that was played when you felt closer to God, but what are you doing with music now that you are a Christian? What's Bach they loved exploring the arts as God's part of God's creation, the fullness of it.
So when Lou and I visited, we went into our room. There was a bunk bed, 2 bunks, and someone had gone and picked fresh flowers from the meadow, not just across the road, but like right down into the meadow. Like they'd obviously been on a walk.
Edelweiss.
It wasn't quite Edelweiss, but it was something like that. It was very pretty, and made a little bunch for me and Lou and put it on our bed with a little sandwich for lunch and a little note saying thanks for coming. And they just put a lot of effort in. So yeah, it's influenced us at Soul Revival with Berea. So we want to be a learning community, not just a course that people do. So yeah, L'Abri we really enjoyed it, didn't we? We talked about rock and roll and the history of rock and roll and ideas.
I told you about L'Abri and you went, so I'm jealous of that. But there is a L'Abri in Sydney, and I did go to a couple of their weekends as well. Too. So the ability to ask any question, it's not silly. It's not something you don't have to suppress your intellectuality to be a Christian. These things, if God is the Lord of all, then there are relevant answers to these things that include you being faithful to God.
And that's an important thing that when I see or speak to some people who don't want to know much about Christianity, sometimes it's because they had questions about it, and the people who were teaching them about Jesus weren't able to answer those questions. So I think that's why it's really cool. We have something like Berea or La Berea.
Yeah.
It's really important, I think, to be able to. You said intellectual suicide. It's just more be able to go, how do I think about this now that I'm a Christian? Also, how can I think about these things when I come in contact with these ideas?
Yeah, and look, I don't have answers to every question either, but it's okay to say so. Instead of saying just believe, I know that there are people that have engaged with these questions and can articulate them better than I can, and I could help someone look for answers to the questions. Yeah.
And I think La Berea was originally set up after post-war Europe was trying to reconstruct, and the Schaeffers went over to try and help in that situation. It was always meant to reach out to young people, and I think
especially university people, because they were being challenged at a high level, and the churches didn't know how to respond. Yeah.
And so I think the outcome, listening to you talk about outcomes, I think the outcome for us was the school communities that we went into. We had that kind of position, the Schaefferian position of you can ask any question. And I remember going into scripture classes and kids sitting there expecting me to try and act like a teacher, and I didn't. I just said, well, I'm here to, share about the Bible. Are you guys interested in anything? And we talk about things in that same sort of way. So I kind of feel like it helped train me as an evangelist, actually.
You had generations of faith where your parents' faith, you went to church, you did what they did, you took it on, and no one was asking why. I mean, I guess some were, but
that's what Schaeffer said was the problem, wasn't it? Teaching morality, not the why.
I mean, postmodernism shook up. Why did we keep regurgitating these habits and traditions? And so there wasn't anyone at that time knowing how to answer that, except to say, a bit like the old capitalists, like, why do I have to do well at school so you can get a good job? Why do you have to get a good job so you can make money? Why do you have to make money so you can send your kid to a school? Like, hang on, it's just a circle. Where's meaning in this? And so, that was being asked more and more as universities started to explore those things. You didn't have to go to university to explore those things, but I think that was the bread and butter, and Christians brought up in those 1940s, 1950s traditions, just of a high church experience, were wanting to know if there should be more than this than just turning up on a Sunday, and or going to something, and that was what Christianity is. Who is Jesus the man?
And I think I'm starting to think of like the Jesus Revolution and all that kind of stuff as well. It's played a part in that, and I think it's going to echo a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today, especially about schools and churches working together and things like that. But Tim, you haven't actually had a chance to speak on the podcast yet. Do you have any memories of Dave before we move on? Because I think that would be cool. I think you said one of the Belvedere Blues Band was one of your enduring memories.
Yeah, I can't remember what we called them. We had so I was part of SALT, which is our Year 7-8 ministry. But at the first week of every term or the last week of every term, we would get SALT Rev and Solies all together. And I can't remember what we called
Rev 21.
Rev 21.
I remember that, yeah.
So Rev was a 9-10 youth group. Yeah, and then there was Solies.
Later on we called it E48. I don't remember why.
Yeah, no.
But I can't remember the early.
But we had one night at
sounds like a new train that's being introduced.
It wasn't a Relay Bash,
It wasn't yet a Relay Bash.
Because the Relay Bash was
that
with
was
the
a
old
little bit later.
Okay. 48 hours after an ecclesia as well as E48.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Ecclesia,
I think it was.
Ecclesia, because we all got
not
together.
that early.
I think it was even earlier than that.
Yeah.
But
we used to call,
whatever it was, we had this night where it was everyone from all the groups were invited to come, which as a young Year 7 was very exciting because everyone's older than you, and it's you're hanging out with all these people. And we picnicked down at Swallow Rock, and then we all walked up to St Tim's, and Belvedere played, And my enduring memory of that is being
That was a good concert, that one.
smashed up against Brad Ware, who was twice my height. My face just basically planted straight into his chest, and his sweat and everyone else's sweat just pouring over me, thinking, this is the best night of my life.
That was a great night.
And that's my enduring. And I think it's solidified. I mean, obviously Belvedere were just...
We must have broke all compliancy rules about the number in that room.
Absolutely fantastic. But it also, I think, solidified as a young bloke being loved by all these older people in this mosh, having fun, just being joyful together. That's a massive enduring memory for me of what Soul Revival was seeking to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stu, you were in that mosh as well, I'm guessing.
It was very good.
I think I got a recording of some of that concert.
I think I've seen some of the footage.
Yeah.
So if that was when Tim was in year 7, I was still in primary school.
There's a photo that someone took of me under the old back corner of the Beetle that was on the wall.
Yeah.
And I got hair, and I'm like going crazy on a keyboard.
Yeah.
And Stu framed that, gave it to me. It's in
that's nice.
my house at home.
Yeah.
Because there's kind of talking about...
I also taught Tim too.
Oh,
Well, that's right, yes.
Let's go into this.
Well, I was going to say, that's my church. Well, the other church memory I have of David is you were still in charge of music when I started in the church band. And I think the thing I really resonated, although I remember, of that was you had this long application form of why do you want to join the band? And if you just said, like, what do you want to do in the band? It was just like, I don't know, because I like guitar. But the application form was things like, why are you a Christian? How you explain the gospel? Like all these kind of things. I'm like, I'm 15 and I like playing guitar.
It's easy to get into Bible college.
I just remember thinking, we don't let anyone preach, and yet there's 4 to 5 songs per service. Why do we let anyone just do that?
Yeah, why you let me do that? For goodness sakes! But no, I passed, and so I was in David's band for
I can't believe I had an application.
It was great. No, I mean I
Surprised
look
I
back
didn't
at that
interview.
now. No, but I quite like it, and I quite like the seriousness.
Yeah,
That's what it signaled to me was, this is actually really serious, and I think through that helped me to learn that I'm not just playing guitar. I'm actually engaging and leading others in the worship of God, and that's a really significant part of what we do when we gather together. So it really did raise the seriousness and the sobriety of what we're doing together when we are up the front, leading that music worship time. So I really like that.
What was he like as a student at school, David?
He's a good guy, yeah. So he did music right through to year 12, and I was his HSC music teacher. Yeah, good student, played guitar, good guitarist.
And Alyssa was my primary school music teacher.
Yeah, she would have had you earlier on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So
Primary
that's my
school.
wife. We were
Yes.
both music teachers there at the time.
Yep.
He was in the musical Joseph and his Technical Dreamcoat
That's
in year
right,
6.
yes.
You were Papa
I was Papa Jacob.
Jacob.
Yep.
Jacob.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's right. And what else? What's the other memory? Oh, there was one performance night, which you now call FOMO. Is that yes, sir?
Not fear of missing out. Phono, for one
For
night
one night
only.
only. FOMO. Yeah. It wasn't called FOMO at the time, but I played a piece on guitar, did something. I remember that I think I was wearing black pants, a long sleeve red t-shirt, and a black t-shirt. Anyway, for some reason I had this weird, like the underneath t-shirt was longer than the one on top.
It had a stripe.
So this stripe on there, and I remember afterwards that was the feedback was don't do that ever again.
From
David, the
Optics.
optics. So that was
So
terrible.
that's
Don't do
optics, not that it's not cool.
Oh no, he didn't care about the before. Like, I'm sure he did. But that was the bit that stuck in my head. Again, probably as a self-conscious 16-year-old.
I don't remember that, but that sounds like it.
Yeah.
I just was imagining you looked like you worked at Target.
You know, Tim, I still do that.
Yeah.
Still,
If the jumper stops and the bottom of the shirt goes
right,
out,
yeah.
call it a tongue.
So you just need to look a little bit tidier.
I don't mind shirts out, but yeah, if you've got a jumper on, I never like that it's poking out, just like this funny stripe. So maybe it just didn't look good on stage.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair. So, Tim, you went to Shire Christian School.
I did.
David is the principal of Shire Christian School. You also, we should declare conflicts of interest.
Conflict of interest.
You were on the board of Shire
am,
Christian School
yes.
as well. What are you guys trying to spruik here?
Need more musos.
No, sorry, that's only a joke. I think it'd be really cool to, first of all, gain a perspective on Christian schools. My wife is a teacher at St. George Christian School, for example, but I'm sure you're not here to say, oh, Christian schools are better, because there's a variety of different options.
There's lots of
schooling.
choice. It's great that there is.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point.
Yeah.
But what do you think sets Christian schools apart from other schools? I suppose that would be my first question in regards to that.
So Christian schools are actually founded for a couple of different reasons. And so I am at one that was founded for certain reasons, and it's not the same reason as others. So my Christian school was founded by parents. It's not owned by any church. So it's founded by parents to be a place to educate their own children and like-minded families. So its founding premise was for the children of Christian families. We would call that a covenantal relationship. Other people, we don't have a closed enrolment, so other people are welcome to apply, like people that might not be Christians. But we're quite clear that was the founding premise. And those parents predominantly were Dutch immigrants at the time. So they came out in the 50s and 60s. It's part of the, probably part of the White Australia policy actually, but also part of bringing skilled workers out and growing Australia. And they came from a country, from Holland, where there were Christian schools that had funding. And that had come from, that comes from a time when a Christian theologian called Abraham Kuyper was the Prime Minister of Holland.
Okay.
So he's both those two things. And he or his parliament guaranteed funding not just for the government schools, but for a Catholic system and for a Protestant Christian system as well. And they came out here and they found a very well-established Catholic school system. It's a very strong one, a government school system, and what they considered an unaffordable Protestant school system, what we might call, or the paper will call elite schools, or we might call sandstone schools or expensive church schools. And they couldn't see a Protestant affordable Christian school option in Australia. And so across Australia, largely these Dutch Reformed people founded, which got up to about 100 schools over between 1960 and 1990 basically across Australia, and for both for them and for other Christians who wanted to join with them from no matter what your church or faith. So not owned by the Reformed Church in any way. So that's a covenantal Christian school. What was your question actually? Because that's how.
Oh, it's just what sets it apart from other schools.
So to be able to, the concept that the parents wanted was that the teaching at the school and its worldview aligned with what was being taught at home and what was being taught at church. So it assumes a Christian family. It makes that assumption. For us to do that, we need 100% active, believing Christian teachers. Not people who say, well, I don't believe it, but I'm happy to support it. That's called subscribing to the ethos. And that's the schools that were happy for you to do that. So, just don't diss us in public. But if we are to be able to bring a worldview into all of our subjects, not just the Christian ones, our teachers need to actually share the faith, not the church membership, but the general evangelical faith of the parents and the churches that they go to. And so that's one of the founding principles. And the other one is that there's no dichotomy. This is a Schaeffer thing. He used that. It's the first time I read that word. I had to look it up. He used that word. No dichotomy between sacred and secular. So it's like, have you heard of the car park miracle?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
yes.
You're fighting and whatever and get out and, you're the Holy Family that walk into church. So it's not like, Sunday's worship, Monday is the rat race. So a school version of that could be that if we bring a chaplain in on Fridays, or we have a chaplain at school, or the principal is the Christian who does the holy stuff, or the deputy, and then you go to another subject and Christ's or God's principles or God's worldview is not present there. So it's very important to our founding mothers and fathers, the parents, that we not only taught the subjects like you would in any school in New South Wales, but where possible, we actually did it through a Christian worldview that informed how we taught and set our students up for life to be able to see things through a gospel-coloured lens. Because they're two key things for our school.
Yeah.
There are Christian schools that are founded as missional, particularly if they're in a part of Australia where there isn't a high church or Christian. I think you'd have to in that area. And so that's a different emphasis. You're going to have a lot more families who aren't aligned with your school. So you can't say, oh, we're covenantal and we're assuming that there's a church and Christian teaching in the home. So they're valid too, of course. So, and I think some demographics can shift over time, and school has to sort of consider what it needs to do in light of, do you want the school still to be there? The answer is probably yes. So what is God's plan for this school?
Okay. And Tim, you went to Shire Christian School.
Yes.
And you also have both your children go to Shire Christian School as well.
They do now, yes. We didn't start there, but yes.
I'd just be interested in what was the reasoning behind choosing for your kids to go there? Because Stu and my children, they go to state schools.
Yes.
So it'd be interesting to contrast that.
Yeah. Well, I think firstly, so my parents sent me to the school and I did K-12 there because they were they're not Dutch Reform, but they were very much agreed with that ethos that it's, you go into a school which is in everything it teaches, confirming and building on the faith of the home. So that was very important for them, that trifecta of...
Call it a partnership between home, church and school.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that all three of those were aligned. That was very important. That was true for the way they chose about schooling. Ros and I were thinking, as we were thinking about schooling, there's you see pros and cons across both. I think we pretty literally wrote a pro and con list across different schools, and actually what it came down to was at the time that our son was starting kindergarten, we needed before and after school care. And Shire does now, but did not at the time have before and after school care. Yeah. And it really just came back to that there was a very...
It's pragmatic.
It was a pragmatic, looking at what are the pros and cons of both and what do you need to offset because of what the school either does or doesn't provide, and particularly in terms of faith development. And so we were thinking, if you go into a state school, obviously all of the teaching is not happening from within that biblical Christian framework. And so therefore you need to offset that by thinking about how do you continue to do that, as a home, around the dinner table, in the car trips and all of those things. I think the danger of Christian schooling for parents is that it can be like, oh great, the school does that discipleship thing, I don't need to think about it.
Offloading.
Yeah, the offload. Yeah. So I send my kids to a Christian school and I send them to kids' church when I can, and therefore I don't need to do anything at the home. And that doesn't work either because, again, you don't get this, you get a dichotomy there between home and school or home and church, which is also disorienting for children. So we, aware of all of those different things. And so then when we were thinking about high school for our son, he was year 5 at the time. He saw a billboard, so good work to our advertising marketing team. And he's like, oh, what about there? And we had not actually actively talked to him about the Christian schooling, but it was in the mix in our minds. And so, we explored. But again, we affirmed all of those things that David just said, that we actually appreciate the fact that it's 100% Christian teaching staff, that everyone is fully engaged in their own personal faith, that they actively bring that into the classroom and they teach all of the differentiated subjects from that perspective. That was something really that we really appreciated and thought was a benefit. So that was kind of a lot of the foundation that we thought about as we were making that decision. And the fact that we had both, quite enjoyed our time at Shire meant that there was a lot of high trust, and there was people like David and others who were still there from when we were there, that, so we were a lot of familiar faces and people that we trusted. And then there were also, peers of ours who had become teachers and who were also there. Yeah. So there was 2 generations of teaching staff at the school that we knew and trusted and, appreciated, speaking into our kids' lives and partnering with us as we raise kids. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Stu, can I ask you a question in regards to, I was talking to your son Ethan only a couple of weeks ago, and he said that when you were just looking at different options for schooling, and one of them could have been a private school, and then he found out what time he would have to get up to go to that school. He said, no way, not going there.
It's also pragmatic.
That's right.
We do start early.
Yeah. Any thoughts on what Tim and David had said, but also in terms of like choosing what school your kids went to? Because they're both finished high school now, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dave's right. Every kid's different. Everybody has different things. We lived in Grace Point, so there was a local school that the boys could walk through the bush to. Yeah. So that was part of the decision. Because of our high involvement in church as a family, we partnered together in ministry together as a family. So we did look for opportunities for the boys to have some secular friends and secular contexts to be in as well, which other families probably don't have quite as much immersion in the church as our family did. But actually, as Lou and I have reflected on our decisions for our boys, we sometimes wonder if it would have been good for them to have some time at Shire, because just really value the school. I think it's terrific.
I mean, we had big conversations over this particular big one. We drove all the way down past Nowra, talked the whole way down. So I appreciate, Stu and I, didn't have the same conclusion at that point, but I appreciated that we were able to engage in these questions. Things like, what is salt and light? Where do you send your children? Is the school a greenhouse? Is it an unhealthy greenhouse or a healthy one? Yeah. School costs money too. Yeah. We can't run that school for free, and not everyone can afford it, and I freely admit that. And So,
do you think that? I mean, so my son only just started going to high school this year.
Yeah.
Being part of some different conversations with different parents about, it seems that the conversation about what high school your child is going to starts a lot earlier. And I think another thing that both Braden and Ethan have observed through the youth ministry is there's often not one big core group coming through from one particular high school, which we used to have, I think, a lot of the time. Stu, I'm sure you can speak to that as well.
Yeah.
But the conversation seems to start earlier, but also I feel like maybe the decision becomes possibly a little bit more individualistic, like what's the best place for my son or daughter to go to, rather than, there's the local school, that's just where they're going. I feel like we have more choice now, but I also find how some parents I spoke to, for example, have said, no, we want to send our child to the local Catholic school rather than a local state school, for example.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested in what your conversations with parents, not just in a Christian school, but like in a sense of like making those decisions. It's almost like some parents that get really hung up on like, if I stuff up this decision, it is going to stuff up my child for a long period of time. What are your thoughts on that?
My sister, who lives up on the North Shore, where there's more schools per square metre than probably any private schools per square metre than any part of Sydney. Yeah, she was torturing herself over all these schools, and I was saying, Katie, like I said, I went to one of those schools for my last 2 years, and I said, I think you could pick any of these schools. Like I knew the heads of a lot of them. Right. You can go to the local state school; it's got a great name, So I think you can torture yourself over, if you get this wrong, something will fall. And So we were, my early years of teaching when I was at Guymer Anglican, I don't know that I don't remember maybe one family that had their kids at our school at the time. It's probably before you started there as well. And there was a real history. So many of the parents had gone to Kirrawee High. It had been a good school. Guymer Anglican had a great youth group. They had chip lunch at Kirrawee High. It's great for me. Considered it basically neutral. Considered the school neutral. Didn't do good, didn't do bad. Sorry, sorry, that was the wrong way. That's what you want to cut. Sorry, didn't promote Christianity like our school would, but didn't diss it either. Though. Sorry?
I did. At Kirrawee High.
Yeah, you did a fair bit.
So that was the thing.
I had a few teachers say that their school was like Kirrawee Christian School.
Yeah. So there was an affection to that school, and it was considered neutral. No one said it was a foundationally Christian school. Of course, it's not going to be. I think that has changed among evangelicals. Some, of course. So we are two things. We're seeing a lot more Anglican families who don't consider their local state school to be neutral or accommodating to Christianity anymore. They see it to be against it or what they believe. And we're seeing a growth in people coming in year 7. Like we used to be a school, there were 60 in kinder, there were 60 in year 10. And if no one left in year 6, there was no places for anyone. Now some years we're doubling our year 7. So there is a sense that if it's not something I can do right through, maybe it's something we can consider at the high school level. So there's a growth area there. But I think people in general, even if they still go to a non-Christian school or a public school, they're not considering it as neutral as they might have in the past. And so we're seeing more interest. So this is people who have a faith, of course. Other people, I think, are aspirational. They've heard things that private schools, whether they're Catholic, Christian, or have a church backing, they hear things that they work harder in the classroom, they have more discipline, or they have whatever. That can be true and false. I don't think we can just group schools like that. But that's a sense that if you're paying money for something, you might be getting something more for the dollar. But particularly for our believing families, they do like or want the idea that the teachers share the faith. If their kid asks a question at a vulnerable moment in pastoral care or home group as a 14-year-old, that their teacher has a faith, might not be the same denomination, but a faith that would give them thoughtfulness in how they answer that question.
Tim and Stu, do you want to jump in on that? What do you think?
The only thing I was thinking was one of this delegation of spiritual formation to the school or to the church. There's a couple of things that can go wrong there from a parent's point of view. Firstly, you can feel like your decision now about what school you send your kids to is what determines their lifelong faith into the future. And so I need to send them to a Christian school because then they'll be a Christian long term, or I need to send them to a state school because then they'll rub up against all the rough edges and they'll learn how to be a Christian and they'll be long term. And
they'll be able to give it an argument. They'll be resilient. Fought the battle.
I mean, all of us have been in children's and youth ministry long enough to know that there are kids from Christian homes who have gone to Christian schools who are still following Jesus and those who aren't. And then there are kids from Christian homes that have gone to state schools and are still following Jesus or aren't. So I think we need to sort of make sure that we don't in any way promise that there is a lifelong...
Can't bake a Christian in the oven.
No, that's right. And I had another thought and now it's skipped my mind. I don't see a lot of this, but I think I'm just sort of highlighting in my mind as a potential danger is, again, when we delegate, particularly to a Christian school, which, as David said, costs money. It's a substantial investment. And if you unhelpfully pair that with I'm doing a financial investment into my child's faith.
So therefore it should be better.
Well, or there's, if they're not a Christian by the end of school, if they've lost their faith, I paid you
waste of money.
I paid you to keep my child Christian. What did you do wrong?
Yeah.
And so that I think I haven't heard a lot of that, but I think that's something just to be aware of. It was interesting when we had the conversation with our son. And I said, so why would you like to go there? And his answer was, I think it would be easier to be a Christian there. And I said, that's really interesting, but also wrong. In the fact that in some ways, yes, but in some ways, no. And one of the things I challenged him with very early on was that it's very easy to be a vanilla Christian at a Christian school when it's assumed that everyone kind of shares the faith and you can just kind of roll along with that. It's actually, in some ways, even more difficult to stick your head above the parapet and say, I'm actually not just a vanilla Christian and just generally vibey Christian. I'm actually like all on for Jesus. Like I'm really passionate about him. I want to pursue him. I'm going to make it known to my cohort that I'm really into Jesus. That's actually can be harder at a Christian school when there's this, the baseline of being Christian is
this cultural
Christianity is really high. Whereas, at the state school, like if you just have to say, I go to church on the weekend, and that's wild. And so it can be easier to be known as the Christian kid, which comes with positives and negatives. So I think that's the other thing I've been constantly challenging, my son in, and just being encouraged by the way that he's taken up leadership opportunities and other things to make it really known that he's for Jesus, and he doing more than the baseline vanilla Christianity.
Stu, in all your years of being in school ministry, as you said, got termed Kirrawee Christian School for a while. Do you think that schools have become more, let's not use the word hostile, state schools have been more hostile, but more against it or not so much for it?
I think it's changed, but I don't think it's any different, to be honest. Like I went to Kirrawee High School in the 80s and it wasn't easy being a Christian in the 80s and wasn't easy for either of my sons to be a Christian at their school either. There was a mix of some of the students would think it was a bit funny that you took Jesus seriously. I mean, if you went to church and didn't get too churchy, then the kids didn't really care about it. The other part of it was some teachers would say things at school that were sometimes derogatory towards the Christian worldview. That's always been the same, really. I mean, Christian schools don't employ people that don't fill in the form, and you've got a version of that now, I suppose, the form.
I wonder if it's as hard as Tim's form.
I think
play guitar in church.
I think by the sound of things, it was harder to get into the band in the 90s. But I think you're going to have a group of people who have all sorts of different worldviews, and they have different experiences of Christianity, and some positive, some really negative. And some people, particularly in science classes, see topics like evolution as an opportunity to put the boot into the Christian kid. Sometimes some of your peers do that, but that's no different, better or worse than things that happen in Christian schools too. I'm sure there's variants of that, but I do think one of the reasons we had such a big youth group in the 90s was I was able to partner with the Christian kids in the school. There was the lunchtime group and the scripture classes. So because we took the lunchtime group out onto the grass and all the Christian kids could be public Christians, I think that helped them a lot. So they all would bring their friends to the lunchtime group. And out on the grass, it was you could just hang around the edge. You didn't have to come in, or you could just grab some chips and have a chat for a while and then leave. We weren't having hot chips just to get kids to come, like people have accused us of. It was.
Did you have vinegar?
No, I do like vinegar. What did you say for your chips at the Chip Lunch podcast?
Vinegar.
You did?
Yeah.
Something else we have in common, salt and vinegar.
It's the English influence, I think.
Probably. Well, it's superior taste, I think. Dave and I have good taste.
Plain salt.
Yeah, 100%.
Has to be plain salt,
chicken salt.
Yeah.
So today.
The purity of the sodium.
Yeah.
We're going to get back to how lots of people come back to traditional later. Maybe we could bring chips back into that. But I think
Fair dingham, I'm going to buy some on the way home now.
I think one of the things that I do miss is there was a more. I think Christianity was considered a bit daggy and a bit benign back in the 80s, though. I think it was.
Yeah, benign's a good
90s.
word.
Yeah.
we were quaint but harmless.
Yeah, that's right.
Not
But,
harmful.
Yeah, but I think since the 2010s particularly, it's really ramped up. Well, I think the New Atheists sort of bring that vibe in the 2000s. And they bring this vibe that God is somehow a creep and, he's a cosmic child abuser and all these kind of horrible things they said about God in the 2000s. And that almost gave people permission. Oh, are we allowed to talk like that? And so that was one thing. I think the politics too changed a fair bit. And so there was a whole heap of stuff about how words are violence, and that means that Christians that don't celebrate certain people's life choices are doing violence on other people by not completely embracing people's life choices. There was conversations like that were a bit trickier. There was more legislation brought in around 2010 in New South Wales about proselytisation, and it started actually with some of the fears of terrorism and domestic terror acts that they were trying to bring some of the people who came onto school campuses, they considered them possibly recruiting people for dangerous initiatives. So there was kind of like a sweeping approach to that, and I think Christians got caught up in that as well. So we were told we're not allowed to proselytise in schools, when back in the 90s there was no anti-proselytising rules. If someone wanted to become a Christian, we could pray with them and they could become a Christian. So those two things changed. I think legislation and the attitude towards Christians being a bit more problematic, I suppose, in some contexts. Not always. I mean, schools, while I was teaching scripture for 25 years, and then Ethan and my son Elijah, both my boys do scripture and chip lunches now, which has been a real privilege to see them do that. But I think the challenge for them is there's less Christians at the school. There's also more hostility towards the lunchtime group. We were just seen as this benign thing. If the kids want to go, they can go. There's no problem. Christians are pretty safe. But then again, I think part of the problem was the Royal Commission to sexual abuse, institutionalised sexual abuse, that caught up churches in on that. And so there was this questioning of, actually, are these Christians safe people? They're not safe ideologically, and they're not safe maybe practically. So restrictions on where we could meet at school, what times, how many people could come. They're not allowed to bring chips to school anymore. They're not allowed to do a fair few things like that. So there's not as many Christians. So I had most of my youth group going to Kirrawee High, and we were kind of like, it was almost like this wonderful opportunity for us all to hang out at school as well. And it was a safe place for non-Christian kids to come and check us out without feeling like they had to join or anything. It was just actually really safe for the non-Christians and the Christians.
So
it socialised it for all of them too. So I think there was less bullying during the 90s than there was in the 80s actually.
Do you think there's less Christian kids in the Shire? Like
that's also another good point.
Like our school, St George,
so.
Innerborough, we're not that much bigger than 20 years ago. Like we're 900 and something, and we were 700. So I don't think we've all doubled in size, and all the Christian kids have gone to a Christian school. They must be still going to schools.
Well, I think you might be right on that.
The churches have shrunk, which is not what I've seen either.
In the Sutherland Shire, they've plateaued.
Yeah.
So, but in the Wollongong region of the Anglican Church, that's the fastest declining region in Sydney. So
Declining.
Yeah. So, and now the Shire, which has been holding its own for about 10 or 20 years, is now starting to decline as well.
Yeah. And that'll be, like I said earlier, we were, so Kuyper, this Dutch politician, theologian, formulated a thing called sphere sovereignty. So the sovereignty of a sphere of influence, and there was the church, the home, and I think the government, and the roles that they had, and the school. So the school's role in his mind wasn't evangelism; that was the role of the church and its people. And so when you found when you form a school and you're Christians, therefore your kids are being taught the faith, whether they are taking it on or not. You're not making a school to evangelise the community. It's not a mission school in that sense. If you dropped a school in Port Moresby or something, you would have to be that. So if the demographics shift, that will be interesting questions for schools founded by Christian parents for Christian families. how we approach it. If, say, there were more than 50% of a school that didn't identify as being active Christian families, that would probably change the nature. But I think God still has something for a school in that situation. Just be different. We have to be, I think, brave and courageous to face the changing needs of schools as we move. Yeah,
I think there's a lot of evangelism in the Sutherland Shire in the 90s, like not only Soul Revival at Guymer Anglican, but also Janelli Anglican, Miranda, Engadine, all those Menai had lots and lots of non-Christian kids coming to church.
Southside,
Horizon. And Horizon, So there was a lot more evangelism. So I think my impression is there's less evangelism to young people at the moment. My other impression is there's more. Most of the Christian kids grow up in Christian families, and we're still losing probably 40% of the kids who grow up in Christian families who end up deciding not to go to church in their adult years. But the other thing we're finding is that the Sydney Diocese generally, the Anglican Church, is the number of newcomers has started to decline since the 2000s. And my guess is that because 75% of people become Christians in their teenage years and childhood, if our youth ministry mission is declining, I think that accounts for the decline in the newcomers that are going to church.
So what's the kind of next point of this? It should be that schools and churches work, Christian schools, I suppose, or all schools work more closely together?
Yeah, we are, our school and others like us are a resource for the churches of the area. We've never asked any church to sell us or market us. We're a choice. And so we've never asked a minister to promote our school. But we are, like if there was a Bible college in the area and you had young thinking people, you could say, well, there's this one just down the road, like we are there if parents are interested. We work with parents more than, through a hierarchy of a church. We certainly want to support churches where we can, and my hope would be that the churches are at least fond of us as a resource, not anti us, without any sense that I would want them to try to push people our way. But we're also not a church, and so we're not trying to be a church, and so we do rely on the local churches for the fostering of the family's faith and their communities. And we're not any denomination at the school. We are Reformed Evangelical Protestant, but we're not an Anglican or a Baptist or a Reformed Church or Presbyterian or anything like that. But we do, we want to be an ally with the churches if their parents so chose to use us, and we're able to do so.
Tim, I can see that you're looking up some statistics there. Is that any play into the fact that we're talking about is how can schools and churches work better together?
Well, I was actually thinking about the last point about David asked a question about has Christianity dropped in the Shire. So just some rough data here. So in 2001, 75 to 76% of the Shire affiliated as Christian.
That's a huge percentage.
Yeah, and so in 2021, it was 20% less, so 57%. Right. So that's a 20% drop in Christian affiliation, so that's ticking Christian on the census box. Church attendance...
which is 4% higher than the national average, so we've just gone below 50% on the national average.
Yes, correct, yes. No religion in the Shire, so that's people ticking no religion on the census form, was 11% in 2001, almost 34% in 2021. So that's risen considerably as well. Church attendance, the AI that I'm using has noted a whole lot of holes, but it's suggesting potentially weekly attendance dropped from about 11% in the early 90s to around 7% in 2016. So potentially it guesstimates that there might be around 2,000 weekly attenders of Anglican churches in the Shire, but it's trying to draw from a number of sources that it's not confident about.
And that's out of 250,000 people, so
what's that, 1%?
1%.
Yeah, so 1% of the Shire is going to Anglican churches roughly. And probably Catholics, they said, are about 6% of the Shire. So yeah, I think in some ways, yes, the number of Christians and Christian affiliation and also church membership has certainly dropped according to those statistics. Going back to the other question, schools and church working together. Yes, this is where my intergenerational cap goes on, because schools are not intergenerational, as in you clock out of a school. And so this is where, again, we need to be really careful as parents or as communities that if we put onto our school the primary faith formation of our young people, it's a faith community that they naturally graduate out of. You're not welcome to go back to the school chapel or the school assemblies when you have graduated out of that school. It's not for all time. And it's just the same with university ministries, can have the same problem, that you embed yourself in a university ministry, but after 3 years or 6 years, if you do a PhD, eventually you're graduating out of that community and you're not, you don't have long-term relational benefits. And so that's why that partnership model, where it's, the faith family and then the church and the school, but young people need to be deeply embedded into their local faith community, their local church, as the community that they're not going to be graduating out of. They're not being told that, you're not welcome here anymore. We have peer expressions of that in our youth ministry and our kids ministry. But again, intergenerational ministry done well is that those young people have relationships that span all the ages across all the church. And so you don't graduate out of your faith community. And that's a really important part of long-term faith formation, is that your community extends right through all of your ages and stages. Because otherwise we create these drop-off points where we see people fall away or they stop going because the faith community they were part of, that where they felt at home spiritually, they're not welcome in that space. They need to find somewhere else, and they need to do a hard transition into another bunch of relationships which they have no connections with. And so, I think this is where schools and churches need to work really well together. And for the schools to have a very modest understanding of what they're doing, that they are one of the partnerships in this model, but not over functioning as the primary faith community. And whether it's a missional school or whether it's some of the percentage of students who go to covenant schools that become Christians while at school, to be able to get those connections back in local churches is going to be really important. That those kids are connected into other youth groups and churches and local faith communities where they can extend their journey as a disciple of Jesus beyond year 12 graduation.
It sounds like a little bit of a difficult knot to untie. Stu, I was going to ask you what your thoughts are on that, because we've talked about why are parents saying that it's their only option. Some parents are saying it's their only option to send to Christian school, but also there's a danger of outsourcing your Christian teaching from the home to the school. We also saying that there's less people going to church, so they definitely seem to be working together. Partnership is a really important term. I think it's really cool, and I know, Stu, how much you love working together in partnership with other Christian organisations and other churches. Is there this element that we can maybe intentionally move towards, the bottom-up, top-down approach that you've been talking about for a long time, in terms of what this Shock Absorber podcast is named after? How do you see all these things kind of working together, and is there a way we can move forward?
Yeah, I do love the word partnership, and I think the Shock Absorber podcast has been a great place to think of ideas, and I'm really excited about the network because it's going to be bringing together people from different Christian ministry contexts to think together, at least to start off with. So, to think that maybe youth ministers and Christian school teachers and principals can think together with senior ministers and assistant ministers and maybe youth works and more college, and just say, what are the relative strengths that we have, and how can we help an individual person in their faith journey to be strengthened while we're in partnership with each other. And I think in the Shire, there's really good partnerships between Christian schools and evangelical churches. I think that's already existing. There's a high trust environment, and I think that there's a lot of relational connections as well. So our church has a lot of our school teachers actually work at Shire, and we have a number of our kids that go to Shire, and some teachers are in state schools and other Christian schools too. But coming back to that statistic of newcomer percentages, I think you see that the NCLS said that in 2001, 12.4% of church attendance was newcomers, true newcomers, people who have never been to church before. And then in 2011, that fell to 9.3%, 2016, 7.9%, and today it's only 5.4%, and that was flagged by the 2024-25 Synod, Anglican Synod report. So you've actually have more than half the newcomers, less than we used to, and yet at the same time, Christian schools are a place where people who have not grown up in a church can actually go to school. And I know there's different kinds of Christian schools, as you were saying, but if someone is actually going to hear and be taught the Bible in a Christian school, and as Tim was saying, if people are eventually going to leave those Christian schools, how can we actually partner together as schools and churches? So I think some people feel a little bit competitive between, some rectors get a bit competitive about Christian schools and feel a bit threatened by that, but I think it's a plus. I think it's a bonus. The other thing is Kenda Creasy Dean's work suggests that when kids have their own spaces to explore what the Christian faith is, then they actually develop new ideas for the church for the future. And of course, we're really excited about intergenerational concepts, that when you have shared spaces for adults and teenagers to be intergenerational, there's benefit in that as well. And the shock absorber brings those two things together. So rather than the homogeneous unit principle that is exclusively you just have your space with the people your age, or exclusively intergenerational where you just do everything together in, say, the inclusive congregational approach of Malal Nell, what Soli's shock absorber does is say, let's give our youth a youth group on a Friday night, and let's give them a church service on a Saturday night that's intergenerational. So they're not going to a youth group on Friday night and then a youth service on Sunday night. They're actually experiencing that. The other good thing about schools is, in my opinion, is there is those student spaces where they can be together, formally in the classroom, but also informally in the playground and in all the sporting events and other things. But there's also an intergenerationality between teachers and students as well. So there's those two spaces are at school. But if we're getting more newcomers coming into Christian schools, which we think in the Anglican school system is happening, there are more people who've never been to church before going to schools, particularly from migrant populations as well, particularly out southwestern Sydney. High numbers of those schools' populations are from India, for example, and a lot of Indian kids had never experienced.
Kids are seeing a Christian Anglican church school before they're seeing a church.
Yeah. So if that's true, and it's not exclusively so, but if the pathway for young people to hear about Jesus was the Friday night youth group in the 90s, it's not the major pathway now. It is our pathway for a lot of kids, but according to these statistics, it's not anymore. And I'm sure this is partly adult, these statistics, but I would love to dig into it more. Maybe after I finish PhD, I might try and write a paper on it or something, and just investigate it a bit more with NCLS. But I think the interesting thing is, okay, if there's a pathway into the schools and the schools are teaching faith, there is the expectation that in a if kids do become Christians at school, which obviously isn't the main goal of some schools, but
it's not bad.
It's not a bad thing. So if kids do begin, and maybe there's an ad hoc expectation they'll find at church. But my thought is, could we strengthen that with a bit more of a network of people from those two worlds that are just talking about those linkages? Like, what are the linkages? How can we strengthen them? Maybe we can't. Maybe it's great the way they are and you just leave it as an ad hoc thing. But, yeah, I'm hoping the Shock Absorber Network might help us to actually connect up those people more. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking about, Shock Absorber is all about, young people are the first to notice cultural change and experience cultural change. And so exactly what you said, Stu, like, the 90s was a high point, certainly in Sutherland Shire, maybe in Sydney, culture of youth groups being a touch point into church and a drawing. You go back a generation before, you get the 60s and 70s where Sunday school was the touch point where
It was.
you drop your kid off. So hundreds of kids from the community would come. Adult attendance was quite low, but there's lots of kids just walking up or being dropped off. And so the model there was, how do we continue to minister to these kids long term? Now the cultural change is we have very low, if any, non-Christian parents dropping their kids off so their kids can get good morals on a Sunday morning. Youth group invite is low for a number of reasons, but the new cultural change, the bump in the road, is
schools.
Non-Christian parents being very confident in sending their kids to Christian schooling.
They want values.
They
may not know what that means.
Yes, but it was similar to this cultural Christianity that said, I want my kid to just get Anglican values.
Yeah.
And so I was dropping them off at Sunday school in the 60s. And it's just, they would want values. And so I think you're right. Like, how do we shock absorber the cultural moment and the school church partnership is really key. And this is, again, where I'm passionate about working well with schools, both for the school's sake, but also for the church's sake. Sorry, reverse of that. For the church's sake, but also for the school's sake, as I said, because schools can't overfunction and be the long-term faith form.
We don't want to open on Sunday.
No, that's right.
Hire a preacher, it's not our role.
No. And so, to work well with those schools so that we have really good connections and pathways for communicating to the Christian parents and encouraging them, keep going, being part of your local community. Being part of your local church is really essential for you, for your kids, for your church, and to have avenues in which those who are becoming Christians or exploring faith from non-faith positions have really good connections into, this is what it looks like for your whole family. This is a community that you can continue to grow in now and beyond school.
Just a little pause there because I'm just thinking about lots of things. We've covered a lot of ground here, I suppose, but it's probably a good time to wrap up the episode.
By the way, can we do the Transcendent thing?
Oh, yes.
Let's do that. Yeah, let's do 10 on that.
All right, cool. You, David, said you wanted to talk about something completely different in Christian school.
I feel like it's come up in stuff that you've talked about over the months and years. Yeah, just and something I've noticed, having grown up in a denomination that often had traditional buildings, lofty roof line, sometimes a non-carpeted floor, and there was a sense that coming into those houses of worship would lift your eyes to the heavens, to whom comes my strength, and so even the liturgy, the symbolism, for example, so I grew up in Catholic church. There's a little red oil lamp that burns day and night in the Catholic church to symbolise the presence of God, and on the night of the Good Friday service, it's put out, and it's relit with joy on Sunday morning. I think that's a beautiful thing. I don't think that's a theological aberration or anything like that. So just sort of, I would walk into these places, and the local ones are quite similar as well. And there was a sense that God is magnificent. We magnify God. And we know in the Christian faith that is both true and also, as Schaeffer says, personal and infinite. That the man Christ came to earth. He was one of us. He ate. He bled. He was a friend to people, a true friend. And so you can approach. And in his death, one of the most symbolic things is that the curtain of the temple is ripped in two, which I just thought was a funny thing when I was a kid. Oh, that's weird. People got up out of their graves and whatever. It's like a nice horror movie or something. But the idea that there was only certain people allowed to go beyond that curtain at certain times. And so the symbolism that you could now approach God. I think that's important as well. And so by growing up in sort of beautiful, lofty places and then starting to go to Protestant churches after I became a Protestant Christian, some of them just look more like factories or, the barest possible. It's like, let's define ourselves by what we're not. And I think it's really important that we can hold both the transcendence of God but the immanence of God. And you can get it too wrong that God is so lofty that he's actually unapproachable, or he's only approachable through rituals. But you can also get it wrong that God is so immanent that you forget Jesus just becomes your drinking buddy or your barbecue mate or something like that. He's the Word. And so I think we need to it's really important that we hold this balance. I don't know if balance is the right word, but we can hold both to be true. And we never get disrespectful in the way that we do have a closeness to Christ. And we never get fearful or distant that we could never get to God, because God's actually come to us.
I don't know if I have great thoughts on it, but it sounds like sometimes that we minimize God's character, and those two things just being speak to God's character is that He's ultimately sovereign over so much of everything, but also He's extremely relational and individual, one-to-one.
In our effort to highlight one, we can subdue the other, you certainly you want to see the person of Jesus, and we'll often use metaphors that make him familiar. He walks alongside us, and there's the footprints in the sand, and those kind of things. But he's also the God that flung stars into space.
Yeah. But it's always a thing. It's so hard to grasp who God completely is, and we won't be able to do that until we meet Him face to face.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Stu, what do you think of that? Because we talked about before, you met in a garage to begin with. We meet in a factory at a Kirui gathering. But there is something nice about going to a real huge cathedral as well. So
there is.
What do you think?
I think, and Tim and Dave might be more articulate on this than me, but I think it's really interesting if you look at the architecture of Christian churches throughout history. You get some of the earliest Christian churches which were caves, and the reason it was a cave was because all the Christians were hiding, so they didn't get killed by the Romans and the locals. So you go to Turkey and there's a whole heap of interesting architecture in beautifully ornate caves that were decorated to be a space.
And there's, I think it's about beauty, isn't it? Not like there's beauty there can be beauty in a factory. Those flowers at Labrie that you see.
Yeah, that's right.
There's an intentionality, and you can do that in what used to be a shed or what used to be a cave.
Yeah, 100%. And then if I won't go through the whole gamut, but if you fast forward to the Middle Ages and there's this transcendent thought about God is other, and so there's these vast cathedrals with these huge high ceilings, and you can't see the top of the roof almost because they wouldn't have had electric lights in those days, and these vaulted ceilings would have only been lit through the sun that came through the windows, and so there was this looking up, so everyone was looking up to God is other. The Catholic churches had the priests giving the sacraments in Latin, so no one knew what was going on.
Have you heard, is it called re-emergence or something? Like there's reports of a movement that young Catholic people are wanting to experience the Mass in Latin.
Yeah, there is.
And there's something about the traditions.
Mel Gibson's right into that.
They're wanting a grounding. They're wanting a grounding in something with a world where everyone's truth is their truth. And it doesn't mean it's a majority of people, but there is something about a hearkening back to a tradition that stands the test of time, and it's not postmodernist, and it's not pre-modernist, and it's not post-postmodernist. It's who we are as a culture and as a people, and I find that quite interesting.
It's going to be really interesting to see how big that gets, because it is taking place. Particularly, they're talking about a quiet revival in England, where lots of young people are going back to church. Revival, apparently, the Catholic Church is booming in America and England.
My church doesn't say, this is the feast day of St. Brian, or
how good would that be?
Or whatever.
Brian.
But we did for the first time have Maundy Thursday, which is the Thursday before Good Friday. And we used to call it Holy Thursday when growing up, and we had an Ash Wednesday and things like that. And the trouble is you can do those things and forget why.
Yeah, well,
so I grew up with a church where every now and then they'd swing incense. I thought, that's pretty cool.
So a mute symbol is dangerous because if it's not
Absolutely.
explained, then people don't know what it means and they attribute their own thing
That's
to it.
right.
So just quickly to take that architecture thing through again, to come back to what you're saying, is if you look at the Reformation, then they stripped out all the beauty out of churches, painted them all white because they thought that stuff was getting in the way
They
of
wanted to address
people listening to the
an
Bible.
error.
Yeah,
they wanted to address an error.
because they had all this, they call it idolatry.
Yeah.
But then if you look at churches through time in the the 20th century, churches become more simple buildings. They're not as
Very pragmatic.
They're more pragmatic. That's the word I was looking
The
for.
word became central.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
pulpit became central.
So there's a lot of and then in the the 80s and 90s with the Willow Creek seeker sensitive thing, let's make the churches clean and just as nice as the malls. So churches
Cinema seating.
Cinema
holders.
seating, all that sort of stuff. And then there's a harking back to people wanting community. So that's where the garage came at Soli's. We didn't want to just go to an hour service and then have a quick cup of coffee and go home. We wanted to spend time together. So we hung out in our own space. And then on top of that, there's the now with people harking back to those other traditions, I think there's a lot more plurality within youth culture now. So while you've got some kids who are right into some of the progressive movements of today, you've got other kids who are following these male podcasters. What do they call it? The manosphere, that are really scary actually. But then you've also got some kids wanting to go back to traditional services where they can't understand the language. Because the whole thing in the 80s and 90s was it's got to be culturally relevant. It's got to be clearly understood. And
so how interesting is a movement that wants a language that you don't really know?
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. And one of my readings on that is that the whole seeker-sensitive movement is based off you really enjoy your life now, so come to church because it's kind of like that, but with Jesus.
Yeah.
And so for
a value add.
Well, yeah. So for an aspiring 1990s, like we're still pre 9/11, so we're still in this Western ascendancy. Everything is wonderful, and suburbia, white suburbia particularly, is on the up, and so therefore, all of the things you enjoy about your suburban existence, just do that with a little bit of Jesus was kind of the selling point. For your partner now, you've got this massive adolescent and young adult depression, anxiety, mental health epidemics. The message that church is kind of like your life now, but with Jesus. So, but I hate my life. My life, I'm psychologically, disturbed. I've got all these things. I don't like my life. And so the message of a seeker sensitive that, it's kind of like your life just with a little bit of Jesus is not something that they want. And so I think that's part of it for me, is that people are seeking out things that are very unlike their life right now, which is why the weird, like being in Latin or, I heard an interview with a Greek Orthodox guy, and he was like, we haven't changed our liturgy for 1,000 years. And yet young people are flocking to our church. We are doing nothing to be attractive. We are not seeking out people, and not even very evangelistic in the sort of the evangelical sense of the word. And yet they've got people flocking to them. They've got, dozens and dozens of people being baptized into their communities. And it's because people are looking for things that are very different, rooted in history, something that is tethered. Because
tethered is a great word. The great post-truth experiment. I'm miserable.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Too much choice.
Yeah.
Choice anxiety, all of these kind of things has all only given me more anxiety. And so something that feels old, something that feels ancient, something that feels tethered, and to go back to the original conversation, transcendent, something that seems very other and much, much bigger than myself. Because right now, myself is not healthy.
I've been told to pursue myself so much that
I'm just wallowing in depression and anxiety. Yeah. And so being able to go to a place, and that's why one of the reasons why some of these traditional faith communities are attracting so many. We had just up the road from us, the Catholic Church had 26 baptisms over the Easter weekend, which is huge for them. So I think there are a lot of, that's just one little local Catholic church. So there are a lot of people who are flocking to find things of substance. And again, we're not Catholic, but we believe that Jesus is the thing of substance, the person of substance, the faith of substance, and something we can continue to hold out to young people is this is where truth and security and substance can be found.
One of the boundaries and direction is also something.
Yep.
That if you're pursuing individualism so much, you end up getting all the way down this hole of, but there's nothing that's not possible for me. But then therefore that creates
the worst thing I could do is give a kid an assignment and say, go home and write a piece about anything.
Oh, I hate that.
And they'll waste all night trying to know what it's about. And I could say it's a piece about this. It can't be longer than this. It can't be shorter than this. It uses these instruments. The rest is up to you. They'll be really annoyed that I gave them boundaries, but they'll get it done because that gives them the freedom to work within it.
Yeah. Anything left to talk about there?
No, it sounds great.
Can I it's been great having you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
I was just going to say, is there one thing that you would like to leave our listeners and watchers with to think about in terms of anything that we've talked about today?
Oh.
A lot of pressure, sorry. Not many boundaries, are there?
I was going to say, use 25 words or less.
Yeah.
And it's due on Monday.
Look, keep it up. I love the discussions that you have. Okay, here's my one thing. I have been trying to say generative intergenerational since you coined that a few weeks ago. I can't get my mouth around.
It's a bit tough to say.
To go gen twice in the same phrase. Yeah. No, look, I appreciate how you engage with thought, community, culture, and what you're doing. And I love that it's. I mean, you're from one church. You founded this from Soul Revival, but it's for anyone to listen and benefit for. And I think Francis Schaeffer would be proud that that all questions are welcome. And it's been a privilege to come and a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, it's great. Well, thank you very much for your service at Shire Christian School as well.
Thank you.
And it's awesome to have you on and get your perspective. So we really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone that's been listening or watching as well. We really appreciate it too. And you can send us a question about Christian schooling or anything else we've talked about today. What was it? Immanence and
Transcendence.
Transcendence. We can do that too. And also, if you want to get on the Shock Absorber mailing list, you can do that via the link in our show notes or on the website shockabsorber.com.au. But with that, thanks for the discussion, guys. Lots of fun. Thanks again, David. And we'll finish with a one way.
One way.
One way.